Hey everybody, it's David Jenkins with Fonville Morrissey Realty. I'm a residential real estate agent here in the North Carolina Triangle. And I want to talk for a minute about the North Carolina Association of Realtors document, their exclusive right to sell listing agreement, Standard Form 101. Now there's been a little bit of confusion about this phrase, exclusive right to sell. That's not to say that the firm is the only company that could sell that property. What it's saying is that when a homeowner signs this agreement with the firm, that the homeowner is then not going to try to simultaneously sell it for sale by owner. But the firm will then try to sell it, and any cooperating agent, regardless of what firm that agent's with, will also be able to sell that property. There are a couple of dates on this document. The effective date is when the document is signed. And then the marketing date is when we put a sign in the yard and it's on MLS and it's ready to be shown, things like that. But once the document is signed, then the seller is saying, I'm not going to try to sell it for sale by owner. Go ahead and invest your time and money and energy preparing this property, the MLS page, any marketing activities you are going to do. Go ahead and get those ready, and rest assured that when and if it sells, you'll be paid a commission. In this document, there's a whole section at the bottom of page 1 and the beginning of page 2 about fixtures. And I have a whole different video about fixtures in personal property. It's very important for sellers to read through this because there's been some confusion where a seller might have, for instance, a fancy tile by their front door that they bought in Italy or got for a wedding gift or something like that, and they mean to take that with them. But when a purchase contract comes in, it's not excluded, and so the buyer expects to keep it. Well, just know the key thing to realize is that if it takes a tool to remove it, like that tile by the front door, like a chandelier in the dining room, it's a fixture that will stay with the property unless buyer and seller agree otherwise in their purchase contract. Well, this listing agreement goes ahead and asks the seller, hey, let's make sure we're on the same page with your agent. Are there any fixtures in the property that are not going to convey? Because let's make sure when the purchase contract comes in, we list those fixtures as things that will not convey. And also personal property, like for instance, a refrigerator or a washer or dryer, things you could unplug and put on a dolly. Are you, seller, planning on leaving these with the property? Because if so, it might help me sell the property to go ahead and list those as personal property that will convey with the real property. A home warranty. I have a whole video on home warranties, but the key thing is for the seller to decide if they're going to agree in advance to pay for a warranty for the buyer. Now, why would a seller want to do that? The number one reason would be that it would cover the fixtures in the property, the built-in appliances during the listing period. And so if your air conditioning and heating were to break while the property is listed, then we might be able to use the warranty to repair or replace that equipment. And also some buyers might feel excited about buying, if it's an older property, something that they know is going to be covered by a warranty. The firm's compensation is in this document, what that will be, and that's a certain percentage. That is, then there's another area where how it's going to be split with an agent that might be representing a buyer or a sub-agent. The sub-agent category is a very rare situation, but this would be where an agent brings in a buyer, but the buyer wants to sort of represent themselves. The sub-agent is not technically a buyer's agent. They're representing the seller, and when I'm representing the seller, there's two agents representing a seller and nobody's representing a buyer. But nevertheless, that other agent did bring in the buyer, and so they would be paid. It's written in the listing agreement how they would be paid, but I would always want to pay them the same as paying a buyer's agent who's completely and totally representing that buyer. But there's one of the key things about the listing agreement is putting down on paper how much both firms would be paid. Now, it's possible that there's only one firm, that the firm, for instance, Fonville Morrissey, might be functioning as a dual agent, representing both buyer and seller. And it could be that while there's one firm representing buyer and seller, that the firm is designating an agent, like maybe David Jenkins, to represent just the seller, and the firm's designating another agent, Jane Doe, to represent the buyer. And I've got a whole video on dual agency and designated dual agency. You might want to look at that if that's confusing. Then in this listing agreement, there's a section about signs, whether or not we have the owner's permission to put a sign in the yard, and some homeowners associations will not allow it. So we need to make sure we're allowed to put a sign in the yard, and the seller will wants us to put a sign in the yard. Whether or not the seller is agreeing for us to hold an open house at the property and to put a lockbox with a key in it on the front door or near the front of the house for agents who come to show the property to be able to access the house without the listing agent or the seller being there. And then after it goes under contract, for an appraiser to come and look at the house without anyone having to be there. And then there's a section on loan payoff information. It's important for us to know if the property owner does have a mortgage, how much that might be, and that will help us to better estimate what the seller's net proceeds would be from the sale with different purchase prices. So anyway, that's a short summary of the listing agreement that the North Carolina Association of Realtors has. If I could answer any more questions about it, my contact information is below. Thank you very much.